So I'm going to talk about the arguments for free trade. We're going to have a video about arguments for free trade and arguments for protectionism. And then we're going to also talk about what's called comparative advantage. And then I'll give you some homework to do. But you've seen this before. I showed you this when we talked about tariffs. This is our graph just of any market. It could be beer or it could be cars or whatever, shoes, whatever. And so this is our domestic supply. Here's our demand domestic, which is our demand inside our country. And so when there's no extra stuff around the world, then our price is here and our quantity's here. But when we trade with the world and we have access to their goods, that's an increase in supply, which is a shift of our curve to the left, giving us lower prices and more stuff. And those are two of the real big arguments for free trade. Consumers get lower prices. Consumers have lower prices. All right, and we have more stuff from which to choose. And I'll just show you what happens if we put a tariff. So if we put a protectionist measure, a tariff, which you learned about yesterday, if we put a tariff, that is, we'll call it a supply tariff. That essentially is an increase in input costs, which is a shift of the demand curve, the supply curve to the left. And you can see what that does is it increases our prices and it decreases the amount of stuff that we can get. And so we're going to have higher prices and we're going to have less stuff. And this happened throughout the last year and a half with President Trump's tariffs, where prices on many consumer goods went up and we had less stuff, and it slowed our economy down by quite a bit. And so this is an argument for free trade. And free trade means no barriers to trade. No tariffs, no quotas, no embargoes, anything like that. And those are two really big economic ones. But the other one is when countries trade, they tend to learn about each other. They tend to have to get along. And what ends up happening is countries that trade and have free trade agreements, they tend to have lots of peace and they never fight. And if they're not fighting and they have peace, you know who that's good for? That's good for everybody, but it's also good for babies. All right, here is Miss Thompson's baby. If we have free trade, she can have more little socks and they can be cheaper. And we're going to live in a world that doesn't have war and has a lot more peace. All right, so those are the arguments for free trade.